it's time for us to get into a conversation about a conference that's coming up, and it's called the Africa Forum on Displacement. Now, this is a very interesting conference that's about to take place, and I am very interested to find out certain things about the whole issue of displaced persons. Now, Sarah Leadham, who's the COO and a co-founder for Inkomoko, and Abubakar Musa Adamu, who is the associate PPH officer with UNHCR Private Sector Partnerships Africa, have joined me on the set this morning, and we're going to get into the conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Delighted to be here.
Yes, it's good to have you here. Now, before we talk about the conference itself, what's the situation with displaced persons? I know we have internally displaced persons, and then also we have the refugees and all of that. What's the situation as we speak globally?
All right. Thank you very much for having us actually to have these interesting conversations. Well, I think it's quite interesting because when we talk about displacement, a lot of people don't know, but displacement actually, the displaced population across the world actually account for about 1% of the global population, right? So when we talk about displacement or displaced persons here, we're talking about refugees, we're talking about IDPs, we're also talking about the stateless persons, right? In Africa specifically, for instance, we have over 44 million people that are forcibly displaced.
Wow.
These are men, women, and children actually that have been forced to flee out of their homes.
Please repeat that number again. In Africa?
In Africa, we have over 44 million men, women, children that have been forcibly displaced out of their comfort zones, out of their homes. For no reasons obvious, they have been uprooted out of their homes and they find themselves in different situations. So these are quite actually intriguing numbers, and for someone actually from the outside might think these are just numbers. But for us internally, I think for each one number that we called, this is a human life, right? So it's not just about the numbers. These are human beings with human faces, right? So when you talk about over 44 million, actually it's quite huge number. I will give you a typical example. For instance, in Nigeria, we have over 3 million internally displaced persons that are displaced, right? And we also have refugees that are from Nigeria that are based actually in other countries. Here in Ghana, for instance, we have quite a significant number of refugees that are coming from different African neighboring countries that are based in Ghana here. These are actually significant number and quite, while not shocking per se, but it's actually really important for us to talk about it, to create that awareness, but even more importantly, to create a path toward building resilient communities for them actually to regain their self-confidence, their self-entitlement, and regain their lives, rebuild their lives, and back to being the basis of human existence.
Okay. Now, this conference is being organized, and I'm sure it may sound obvious, but why is this forum, this conference important?
So when you have 44 million people just across sub-Saharan Africa that are facing displacement, there's not enough resources from a humanitarian perspective to provide everything that people need to rebuild their lives. And when you look globally, the number of refugees goes up year after year. But we're also seeing across the continent the economic development, right? We've got new buildings, we've got growth, we've got prosperity, right? People are more educated, healthier, there's more opportunity. So this conference is really about making sure that those economic opportunities, the private sector development that's happening across the continent, is also connecting with displaced communities. So for example, my organization in Homoko, we're in Rwanda, Kenya, Ethiopia, and South Sudan. We do training, consulting, and direct investments into refugees to start and grow businesses. So at this conference, we're pulling together private sector actors, philanthropy, government leaders, really to look at ways that there can be more direct investment into refugee communities. Not just to benefit refugees themselves, but within the entire community ecosystem. So if you're investing in one part of the community that can thrive, there's those ripple effects to the host community as well. So that's what this conference is all about.
One important point also to add to what Sarah said is the fact that when you look at actually Africa as a continent, we are blessed with a lot of private sector leaders. Okay. We are also blessed with entrepreneurs, inventors, and innovators.
Exactly.
But one issue that has actually for some time eluded Africa has been peace, right? Here, now and then, we see conflict, we see violence, we see persecution. Yeah. Now, for each of these events, actually, it creates displacement crisis. Okay. And for this displacement crisis, there are needs. UNHCR have been at the forefront of responding to this crisis. Unfortunately, actually, we cannot do this alone. So the consistency of this displacement has led to like a lot of needs and gaps that are even stretching our donors. So we need the private sector to come on board. We need the private sector to be part of this. Okay. So that's why it is important to have this forum as well, so that this underfunding that Sarah talked about actually can be comprehensively looked at within the lens of private sector solutions.
Exactly.
Now, in what way would you say that private sector can play a role? You know, because yes, like you said, we are blessed with a lot of entrepreneurs and private sector players, but in what way can they help in this particular situation?
A little bit of context. In 2021, this forum actually held, mind you, this is the second edition that we're talking about here in Ghana. So in 2021, we had the first edition, which held in Kigali, Rwanda, right? And then we saw the enthusiasm across the private sector generally, being in the same room, create that awareness, create path to building resilient communities. Now, what we want to do in this forum, right, building on what happened in Kigali, is to ensure that the awareness that was started creating in Kigali have been sustained. So where are we with those commitments that we have made? Where are we with those pledges that we have made, right, in Kigali? But more importantly, to secure more pledges from the private sector, to secure more commitment, so that the resilience communities that we are talking about could create a kind of a comprehensive pathway toward ensuring that these displaced people actually have comfort, have their lives being rebuilt, and at the end of the day, we'll all be better for it.
All right, now, what are some of the things that people can expect to take away from this conference?
Yeah, well, hopefully we expect that people will be inspired and ready to start doing business within refugee and displaced communities. So that could be an understanding that refugees in many places have the right to work and can directly be employed, that refugees are starting and growing thriving businesses and are seeking investment, so there's investment opportunities there. It could be also investing in education. So we have a handful of different partners that are really looking at how do we engage young people in particular into education opportunities. So we're hoping that people walk away from this event feeling an expanded sense of what's possible and a commitment to be able to put that into action. I think you can have a lot of conferences where ideas are exchanged, but you know, as Boubacar mentioned, that we're looking for these commitments that people can walk away really with an action plan to make things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Also to add to what she said, right, these African private sector leaders that I talked about earlier, we want them to understand that these displaced people actually are their brothers and sisters. They are their families. They are Africans just like every other people. So what can Africans do for their own African brothers and sisters? So it is a brotherhood, right? Come on as African leaders, African private sector leaders, support the African brothers, African sisters, and African children that have been displaced across the continent. There are different solutions, right? The conference is all about solutions. So what solution are you bringing on board? What solution are you bringing to the table? When we talk about solutions, there are different kinds of it. It could be as anything as I am committing to supporting 10 refugees to secure internship opportunities in the next 1 year. I am committed to ensuring that 5 refugees have been offered scholarship for education in a university, post-secondary school education. So there are different solutions that you can create. We are not looking at a complex solution, but as simple as anything that could, at the end of the day, provide relief for this displaced population that we talked about.
Okay, what's the Global Refugee Forum? What's that about?
So the Global Comfort of Refugees actually is a global comprehensive solution, right, that brings about the governments, the private sector, individuals, everyone on board globally to address the issue of displacement.
Okay, that's what it is.
That's in summary. What is it? So it is a pathway for creating comprehensive response towards providing solutions to the displacement crisis all over the world, right? This year, actually, we are convening the second edition of this GRF in Geneva in December, where government leaders, private sector leaders, individual leaders will convene together, right, to make these commitments, right, toward those solutions that we're talking about. So, for instance, one of the reasons why we're having the forum is to ensure that we, like, filter in solutions from the African perspective so that this solution could be actually announced or pledged at the GRF in Geneva in December. Yeah.
So, back to the conference. When is it happening? Where is it happening? How can people participate? Who are you expecting to be there?
So we have about 500 delegates coming from around the continent, mostly representing private sector. We also have some government officials, philanthropy, but the conference is happening at the Kempinski. We're getting kicked off with a Youth Solutions Day. A lot of young people who have been displaced know what they want for their future and are articulating that and speaking that to decision makers. So that's happening tomorrow. Then we go into 2.5 days of discussions, but more like a TED-style talk where there's going to be interactive panels, not sort of, you know, the boring panels, but, you know, kind of trying to filter in that innovation and doing things differently. We have a great performance and gala. Salif Keita is performing, and we're pulling together some star power to try to bring attention to what's happening. Yeah,
if you have Salif Keita on that's pretty impressive.
And also other African entertainers and celebrities are going to be there. For instance, Tubaba from Nigeria will also be, will also be there. Yeah, we also have a lot of business leaders as well. African Development Banks is going to be there. Yeah, we also have a quite huge actually number. But one interesting aspect actually, the enthusiasm that we have seen. For instance, our expected guests actually is between 250 to 300, but as of last week, we're already fully booked. We have over 500 registered. So we have to filter in to see who and who actually could be permitted even to attend the forum. So that enthusiasm from the private sector is actually quite commendable. Yeah.
So I mean, your numbers are already, you know, beyond what you were expecting, but can people also stream online? Will it be streamed online?
Absolutely.
Can people watch it online?
Absolutely. Yeah, people actually can stream online. And then the streaming site actually is www.amahorocoalition.com /forum actually _ or hyphen AFD. So I think it's been displayed on the
That's
screen.
On the screen there.
Yeah,
so that link.
Absolutely. So the link there, people can just click the link and they can stream it live. And then so we have actually received quite a number of requests for even this virtual participation. And we're happy to say yes, individuals that have not been able to participate fully physically can actually join the conference virtually. And it will be a life-changing experience, I can imagine.
I can imagine. Well, thank you very much for coming through. Thank you very much for sharing with us. Any final words before we go? Final thoughts, final words?
Yeah. We're delighted that Accra is hosting us and to be able to have this conference here. We see a lot of potential. Part of the reason the conference is happening in West Africa this time is really just because there was so much investment and interest from the private sector in West Africa. So really looking forward to a great event, and thank you for having us here today.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, from my side, one thing I can say is that this is an African event for Africans, right? Like Sarah mentioned earlier, it's not the normal boring kind of conference. It's more like an interactive discussion, and it may interest you to know, for the first time, we are going to integrate faith leaders, right? Yes, so faith-based leaders across different religions in the continent going to be part of this conference to also share their own experiences, but more important, to also make commitment and pledges. So Africans for Africans, that is it.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so we were joined on this conversation, the Africa Forum on Displacement, which takes place between the 1st and the 3rd of November at the Kempinski Hotel by Sarah Leadham, who is the COO and co-founder of Inkomoko, and Abubakar Musa Adamu. He's the Associate PPH Officer with UNHCR, Private Sector Partnerships Africa.